I didn't know that the softest years of my life would one day become the sharpest memories I carry. Back then, everything felt untouched, uncomplicated, almost sacred. I thought the people who shared your childhood were stitched into your future automatically. I thought loyalty was natural and love, especially the kind that grows in silence, was unshakable. I believed all of that because of her, and because of him, my cousin, Denial. But life has a way of correcting your illusions, and when it does, it doesn't warn you. It just watches you fall. Before the heartbreak, before the shifting loyalties, there was just a boy, me, trying to understand why his whole world fit so perfectly between two houses separated by a rusted metal gate. That gate squeaked every time she leaned over it and called my name like the world was waiting on us. Ian, Jaldi AA, we'll be late. I pretended to be annoyed, but inside, I lived for that sound, for her voice, for the way she looked back every few steps on the way to school, making sure I was still following. And I always was, not because I had to, but because walking behind her felt like walking toward the future I wanted. I don't know when things changed. Maybe it was when she began to grow into herself. More confident, more beautiful, more distant. She moved forward. I stayed quiet. And somewhere in that space between us, my feelings took root. Not the loud kind of love, not the dramatic kind. Just a quiet certainty that she belonged to a part of my heart I never showed anyone. Except Denial. He wasn't just a cousin. He was the kind of friend you believe God sends to make life easier. Charming without effort, confident without trying, the kind of person everyone noticed before you even opened your mouth. I trusted him with everything, even the one thing I guarded the most. I think I love her, I had told him once. He smiled like it was obvious. You two are meant to be. Anyone can see that. And I believed him. I believed everyone. Maybe that was my first mistake. There are moments I replay now, small things I ignored. The day she didn't call me for our walk. The way she sat beside him in class, a little too comfortably. The laughter that used to be mine echoing around him instead. I told myself it was nothing, that I was overthinking. But hearts know, even when you pretend they don't. One night, I sat alone, waiting for her message. It never came. The silence felt heavier than usual, as if something in the air had shifted. I told myself she was busy, that nothing was wrong. But deep inside, a quiet fear whispered the truth I wasn't ready to face. Love doesn't collapse in one loud crash. It fades, softly, slowly, like a sunset you don't notice until the sky is dark. Before everything shattered, my life was warm, predictable, safe. A girl I adored, cousin I trusted, a world I believed could never betray me. But innocence is always the first casualty. And I was still too blind to see the storm that was already forming. I wish I could say everything changed in one dramatic moment. That there was a clear beginning, a clear warning, a clear line I could point to and say, this is where it all went wrong. But it didn't happen like that. It happened quietly, gradually, so slowly that I almost convinced myself nothing was happening at all. Almost. In the beginning, the changes were small enough to ignore. She stopped saying my name with the familiar softness I had grown used to. Denial started showing up in places he never cared about before. And whenever the three of us were together, I felt something I had never felt before. Like I was standing outside my own story, watching them fill the spaces I used to belong to. The first real distance came through a simple text. Me, evening walk? I'm outside your gate. Her, not today.
I'm tired.
That was it. No smile in her words, no warmth, no sign that she even hesitated. The girl who once argued about which route we should walk now sounded like she couldn't wait to be away from me. I stared at the message longer than I should have, waiting for something else to appear, but it never did. I told myself people get tired, people get busy, but deep inside, something whispered that this wasn't tiredness. This was detachment dressed in excuses. And then came Denial. He showed up at my house one afternoon, leaning against the door like he owned the moment. Bye, let's go out, he said, casual, effortless. Like he wasn't the reason half my thoughts were tangled lately. I agreed anyway. Maybe I wanted to feel like nothing had changed. He took me to the cafe near her college, the one she loved. And the second we walked in, time froze. She was already there. With him. The shock wasn't that they were together. It was how they looked together. The comfort, the ease, the familiarity that shouldn't have existed between them. She looked startled when she saw me. He didn't. In fact, he smirked. And that smirk cut deeper than anything I had the cura. I sat beside her, pretending nothing was wrong, pretending I wasn't unraveling from the inside. "You're here early," I said. "Thought you weren't feeling well." She didn't meet my eyes. I felt better. Denial was nearby, so we just came. Just came. That single word felt like a blade. From that day forward, everything in my world dimmed a little. She stopped waiting for me after class. Stopped sharing the little stories she used to spill without thinking. Stopped texting me with the energy she once had. But she didn't stop talking to him. I saw their chats once, her laughing at his messages, replying instantly. And I knew I was fading from her world long before she said a word. One night, she messaged me that she'd be home late. Denial had asked me earlier if I wanted to hang out. So where was he now? Why were they both unavailable? The questions clawed at me, each one sharper than the last. That night, lying in the dark, I felt something shift inside me, like a crack forming in a place I had always believed was unbreakable. The signs were clear. Her silence, his confidence, their timing. Everything whispered the same unbearable truth. I was losing her, and I didn't even have the right to ask why. Because the cruelest endings aren't the ones you see coming. They're the ones you feel long before you can prove them. People think heartbreak is loud. They imagine shouting, slamming doors, dramatic endings that echo like thunder. But mine wasn't like that. My heartbreak arrived quietly, silently, like a glass slipping from your hand in slow motion, long before it ever touches the ground. I remember the moment it happened with a clarity that still hurts to breathe. It started with a call. Her mother's voice trembled through the phone. "Ian Beta, she's still not home. Can you check?" My stomach twisted before she even finished. Because I already knew. Not the truth, just the feeling. The terrible, suffocating feeling that had been growing inside me for weeks. Whispering warnings I kept silencing. I grabbed my keys and left the house without thinking. The night air hit me like a slap. Cold, empty, heavy. The kind of night that tells you something is waiting at the end of the road, and it won't be kind. I drove to the only place that made sense in the worst possible way. Denial's apartment. Even before I reached the door, I heard it. Laughter. Her laughter. The sound that once felt like sunlight now cut through my chest like a blade. I pressed my hand to the doorframe, breathing hard, feeling my heart crumble piece by piece. The door wasn't even locked. It opened gently, softly, almost respectfully, as if giving me time to prepare. But nothing could have prepared me. She stood there, too close to him, her hair tied up carelessly, wearing a shirt that definitely wasn't hers. He was smiling. That familiar, smug smile he used to give me when he played harmless pranks. Except this one wasn't harmless. This one wasn't a joke. This was betrayal in its purest, cruelest form. She saw me and froze. Her face drained of color. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She looked like someone who had been caught in the middle of a fire she pretended didn't exist. Denial didn't flinch. He didn't act surprised. He looked ready. Ready to hurt me. Ready to win. She whispered, "Ian, this isn't what it looks like." I laughed. A dry, broken, almost unfamiliar sound escaping my throat. "Then tell me why you're here. Tell me why you're with him." She looked down, and that was the moment my chest cracked open. Not the betrayal, not the lies, but the way she couldn't even look at me while breaking me. Denial stepped forward, as if claiming victory. Don't make this dramatic. She chose me. Chose. One small word. One deadly truth. I turned to her, desperate for denial, for something, anything. "Is that true? Tell me I didn't lose you without even knowing." Slowly, painfully, she lifted her eyes. I'm sorry, Ian. But yes, I chose him. Something inside me collapsed. Not my heart. My entire chest. My entire world. I stepped back when she reached for me. Her touch felt unbearable. Her voice felt poisoned. Understand. I whispered. I don't even understand why I wasn't enough. She cried. He didn't. He stood there like he'd won something worth celebrating. I walked out before I shattered in front of them. And as if the sky knew, rain began to fall, cold, relentless. Each drop felt like a tear I refused to shed. People say heartbreak makes a sound. It doesn't. It makes silence. A silence so heavy it presses against your ribs until you forget how to breathe. That night, I didn't just lose her. I lost him. I lost everything I believed was real. And in that quiet ruin, something inside me died. People talk about heartbreak like it destroys you immediately. They imagine pain crashing all at once, like a storm tearing through your chest. But the truth is darker than that. The real pain comes later, in the silence, in the empty hours, in the moments when you should be okay. But you're not. The night I walked away from them felt like my soul caving in. But the real fall, that happened afterward. The days that followed didn't feel like days at all. They felt like a blur of nights. Long, sleepless, suffocating nights. I didn't sleep. Not the first night. Not the week after. My mind wouldn't let me. It kept replaying everything on a loop. Her wearing his shirt. His satisfied smile. Their closeness. Her apology that tasted like poison. His arrogance that tasted like victory. Every detail cut deeper than the last. A slow knife twisting without mercy. I tried to function. I tried to pretend life was still life. But grief turns familiar things into weapons. The road she and I used to walk felt like a graveyard of moments I could never get back. The cafe we once loved felt rotten. Even my own room felt like a stranger's house. And the worst part? Everyone seemed to know. Everyone acted softer around me. Like I was something fragile, something broken, whispering behind my back, avoiding my eyes, as if I was the last person to understand my own story. That's what betrayal does. It doesn't just break you, it embarrasses you. My phone kept buzzing. Her mother, friends, people pretending to care. Even denial called once. Maybe to play the good guy in the mess he created. I let the phone ring every time. I didn't want comfort. I didn't want explanations. I didn't want anyone. I wanted silence. Because silence felt safer than hope. One night, everything inside me collapsed. No loud breakdown, no dramatic scream. I just lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling every emotion crash against my ribs. Anger, sadness, self-doubt, shame, confusion, until it all faded into one thing. Nothing, just emptiness. A cold, dead emptiness that settled where my heart used to be. The mirror broke me more than they did. 3 days after everything happened, I finally walked to the bathroom and looked at myself. I didn't recognize the person staring back. My eyes were hollow, like they'd seen too much. My face looked older, like grief had carved its initials into my skin. I whispered, "Who am I now? If they chose each other over me, what does that make me?" The silence answered, "Invisible, replaceable, not enough." I shut my eyes and broke down. Not the soft kind, but the kind that feels like something inside you is dying. I stopped going out after that. Stopped attending college. Stopped replying to anyone. I lived inside my room with nothing but the dim lamp and her voice echoing in my head. I chose him. Those 3 words became a nightmare on repeat. And the question that destroyed me kept returning. Why wasn't I enough? Every possible answer hurt. Every version of the truth tore me apart a little more. Losing her was heartbreak. Losing him was betrayal. Losing them both on the same night? That was devastation. Chapter 4 was my fall. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a slow, suffocating descent into nothingness. But even the longest fall has a bottom. And when you finally hit that bottom, something strange happens. You stop falling. You start rising. I thought heartbreak had reached its peak. I thought I had seen the bottom of despair. I was wrong, because the night I learned the truth, everything I believed about my life, my wife, my world, shattered all over again. It began quietly, too quietly. A letter, a report, the kind of thing you hope is wrong before you even open it. But hope is a cruel companion when betrayal has already dug its claws deep. I remember holding the DNA report in my trembling hands. Cold blue light from the office flickered across the paper, highlighting letters that should never have existed. My name, my wife's name, and another. The lines blurred. The words didn't make sense at first. Then, like ice snapping inside my chest, it all hit me. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. My hands shook so violently I had to clutch the crumpled paper like it was a lifeline. The world around me dimmed into shadows, leaving only the reality of the betrayal glaring back. I turned to her. She was standing by the window, avoiding my gaze. Every inch of her face screamed guilt. Warm light touched half her face, half hidden in shame. She couldn't even meet my eyes as the truth carved itself into my life. And there he was, the assistant, smirking in the background, confident, untouchable, aware of the damage he'd done, watching me unravel in a way denial never could. He had claimed victory without a word, without struggle. I collapsed into myself. Not dramatically, no yelling, no screaming. Just the kind of numbness that seeps into your bones and refuses to leave. Sitting alone in an empty room, the shadows swallowing me whole, I realized the depth of the world I'd been betrayed into. And yet, in that darkness, a strange clarity emerged. Pain sharpened my senses. Betrayal stripped away every illusion I had left. I saw their arrogance. I saw their weaknesses. I saw exactly how fragile their happiness really was. For the first time since that night began, I looked in the mirror. The man staring back at me wasn't the same one who trusted blindly, who loved entirely, who believed in others more than himself. His eyes held something new, cold, calculated, determined. I could feel it stirring inside, the quiet, simmering power that comes from being pushed to the edge and realizing you've learned how to survive. And in that moment, I made a decision. I wouldn't be their victim anymore. I wouldn't let betrayal define me. I would take control. I would rise. I would rewrite the rules of the game they thought they had won. Because pain teaches truths that comfort never does. And now, I knew exactly how to use it. The fall had crushed me, left me hollow, stripped me of trust, hope, and any sense of certainty. I thought the world had ended, that everything I believed in had vanished. But in that emptiness, I found clarity. Pain teaches things comfort never will. Pain whispers truths you're too afraid to hear. Pain makes you see the patterns you refuse to notice. And I realized something crucial. I had two choices. Stay broken, a victim forever, lost in memories and despair. Or rise, take control, rewrite the rules of the game. I chose the latter. I wasn't going to confront them with anger. I wasn't going to beg for explanations. I wasn't going to waste my energy on futile outbursts. I would become untouchable, unseen, yet unstoppable. Every move I made would be deliberate, every word measured, every glance calculated. I started observing, listening, documenting, every lie, every secret, every weakness, every misstep they thought invisible. Denial believed himself untouchable. She believed she had won, but neither had an idea what I was planning. I spent hours quietly strategizing. In cafes where nobody noticed me, in rooms filled with papers and files, I pieced together every shred of truth. I discovered hidden debts, whispered rumors, and the fractures they had spent years hiding behind smiles and lies. Every confidence they displayed became a weakness I could exploit. I tested reactions carefully, pretending to smile in front of friends and family, masking the storm brewing underneath. Hidden anger simmered in my eyes, unnoticed but burning with intensity. Every casual remark, every subtle gesture, was a thread I pulled to see how their world wobbled. I reached out to allies I knew I could trust, people who had observed the cracks I had seen first. Quietly, secretly, I built a network, a silent army of knowledge. I wasn't reckless. I was precise. Every step forward was a calculated advance. And at night, when the city lights flickered below my window, I allowed myself one small indulgence. Thinking about the moment when all this careful planning would matter. The moment when their arrogance would betray them, and every lie they built their happiness on would crumble. They thought I was gone, invisible, weak, broken. But in the shadows of my pain, I had learned patience. I had learned strategy. I had learned control. The boy who cried alone on the floor of an empty room was gone. In his place stood someone sharper, colder, and more aware. Someone ready to reclaim what was stolen. Not with noise, not with drama, but with inevitability. Their world had been built on lies. Lies always crumble. And I would be there when it happened, silent and untouchable, watching as the empire of their arrogance fell to pieces. Piece by piece. I wasn't just rising. I was becoming the storm they never saw coming. By now, everything was falling into place. Denial and she had grown careless. Their arrogance made them predictable. Their secrets, once hidden behind smiles and confidence, were now mine to use. I wasn't the broken boy anymore. I was the storm waiting silently in the shadows. Every move I made was deliberate. Every smile I gave was a mask. Every conversation I had was calculated. I wasn't seen. I wasn't suspected. I was invisible. And invisible is power. I had discovered everything. Denial's financial misdeeds that could ruin him if exposed. Her lies to family, the ones she used to justify her choices. The friends and colleagues who quietly doubted their relationship, who could be swayed if approached correctly. Everything that gave them confidence now became their weakness. I started small, subtle hints, passing words that would make them anxious without them knowing why. Tiny leaks that made them wonder if someone had seen behind their carefully constructed facade. They never suspected me. How could they? I had become the shadow they underestimated completely. I practiced patience. I waited for the perfect timing. Every interaction was a test. Every reaction recorded silently in my mind. I learned the rhythm of their fear, their arrogance, their blind spots. I smiled at them, laughed when necessary, nodded when required. But every gesture concealed calculation. Every laugh masked intent. At night, I would sit alone in front of the mirror. The boy who once cried, the man who once loved blindly, the one who once begged for truth. All of him had been replaced. In the reflection, I saw someone sharper, colder, relentless. Someone who had learned how to strike without warning, how to reclaim what had been stolen piece by piece. I watched the wedding preparations from afar. Every invitation, every seating chart, every tiny detail became part of the plan. The perfect opportunity to expose lies, to reveal truths, to let the world see the cracks in their story. I wasn't driven by rage anymore. I wasn't a man consumed by heartbreak. I was patient. I was precise. I was inevitable. Every lie they had built their lives on would collapse silently. Every secret they thought buried would surface at the exact moment it mattered most. And when it happened, they wouldn't see me coming. They would never suspect the quiet, calculated force that had been standing in front of them all along. I wasn't the boy who loved blindly anymore. I was patience. I was clarity. I was the shadow they would never see until it was too late. And in that quiet, methodical preparation, I realized the most important truth of all. Pain had made me strong. Betrayal had made me sharp. And now, the boy who had once been destroyed was ready to rise. I wasn't just coming back. I was taking control. And they would regret every moment they ever underestimated me. The wedding day arrived draped in perfection. Sunlight warmed the decorated hall, flowers filled the air with sweetness, and laughter echoed like a celebration the universe had blessed. People twirled in expensive clothes, posed for photographs, and smiled as if life had handed them everything they ever wanted. But I knew better. Perfection is often the final disguise of a lie. I entered the hall quietly, not hiding, not rushing, just present, calm, controlled. And that calmness was louder than any entrance I could have made. Whispers followed almost immediately. Some recognized me. Some pretended not to. Some looked at me with pity, believing I was the broken boy who had been left behind. Let them believe that. Underestimation was my greatest weapon. I walked down the aisle slowly, letting the cold air settle around me. Eyes widened. Conversations paused. Even the music seemed to hesitate for a second, unsure how to exist in the tension that arrived with me. She saw me first. Her smile froze in place, like a portrait cracking from the inside. Denial turned next. Confident, relaxed, wearing that same smirk that had once torn me apart. Not today. Not anymore. I waited. Patience had become my strength. Strategy had become my reflex. The officiant began his scripted words. The guests leaned forward to witness love, and their faces radiated a happiness painted on lies. Then came the pause. A natural one. A breath between sentences, the perfect moment. I stepped forward slightly and spoke, my voice calm, steady, but carrying a weight that sliced through the buzzing atmosphere. Ladies and gentlemen, I have something important to share. The hall fell silent instantly. Even the air felt scared to move. She gasped softly. Denial's smirk cracked. The crowd turned to me with a mixture of confusion, curiosity, and dread. I didn't rush. I didn't tremble. I didn't burn with anger. I simply revealed the truth they had buried under lies. I exposed Denial's financial frauds, the debts he'd hidden, the records that could destroy his reputation in seconds. I exposed the lies she had fed the family, twisting reality to justify the betrayal, manipulating emotions to make herself look innocent. I exposed every detail of their deceit, not with rage or shouting, but with a cold clarity that made every word echo across the hall like a verdict. Gasps, whispers, hands covering mouths. People stared at them, not at me. As their entire facade collapsed right in front of the cameras they hired to capture their perfect day. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. And I didn't look back at the chaos I had unleashed. I didn't need to. Truth is louder than revenge. Truth burns deeper than anger. Truth destroys without mercy. They stuttered, panicked, reaching for explanations that didn't exist. Their perfect wedding rotted in seconds, reduced to rubble by realities they had hoped would never surface. And me? I simply turned around and walked away. Not because I was escaping, not because I was afraid, but because I had already won. Victory wasn't in ruining their wedding. Victory was in reclaiming myself. Pain had forged me. Loss had sharpened me. Betrayal had awakened me. And now, I was untouchable. The dust had settled. The whispers had faded. The guests had left, carrying the story of that wedding night like a secret they couldn't shake. I stood alone in the hall, the silence pressing around me, and for the first time in months, I could breathe. The weight of betrayal, years of trust broken, of love lost, of family deceived had lifted. It left behind something strange, unfamiliar, clarity. Denial and she were gone from my life now. Not because I forced them out. Not because I needed revenge to feel whole. They had chosen their path. And in that choice, they had handed me something they never intended: freedom. I realized, in that quiet moment, that revenge had never been about humiliation. It wasn't about making them suffer or proving a point or turning their world upside down. All of that was meaningless compared to this, reclaiming myself, taking back the dignity that I had thought lost forever, owning my story, my pain, and my life. Every lie they spun, every betrayal they committed had been exposed. But the exposure wasn't the triumph. The triumph was mine. I had survived. I had watched the truth surface and witnessed the consequences of deception without being consumed by anger or despair. I was no longer the boy who had crumbled in empty rooms or drowned in the silence of lost love. I walked slowly through the empty hall, touching the remnants of a celebration that had turned into a revelation. The music and laughter were gone, leaving nothing but echoes that didn't hurt anymore. That emptiness felt clean, felt final. I understood, then, that closure doesn't come from apologies, confessions, or explanations. It comes from within, from recognizing your own worth, from realizing that no one else's choices can define your peace. For months, I had been trapped in a storm of heartbreak and betrayal. But now, standing in that quiet, I felt the first rays of calm seep into my chest. The anger had softened. The pain had lost its sharp edges. What remained was strength, wisdom, clarity. I didn't need them to make amends. I didn't need recognition or validation. I had everything I needed inside me. The knowledge that I had endured the worst kind of pain and emerged intact, whole, unbroken. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I felt free. Free to live. Free to love again. Free to trust myself. Free to step forward without carrying the weight of their choices. Sometimes, the people who hurt us the most teach the lessons we need to survive. Sometimes, the ending we dread becomes exactly the beginning we need. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and let the silence embrace me. Not as a void, but as a space for something new. I was no longer defined by heartbreak. I was defined by survival, by resilience, by the quiet power of rising above. The weeks after the wedding felt unreal, almost dreamlike. The storm of betrayal, revenge, and revelation had passed, leaving a quiet calm I hadn't known in years. I woke each morning without the weight of their choices pressing down on me. No confusión, no heartbreak, no endless what-ifs gnawing at my mind. Just silence, just clarity. I began rebuilding my life, not around anyone else, not around what had been taken from me, but around myself. I pursued the dreams I had abandoned in grief. I reconnected with people I had neglected, and slowly, carefully, I allowed myself to feel again. Not recklessly, not in fear, but honestly, completely, without hesitation. I learned something profound. Self-worth isn't given. It isn't earned from others. It is claimed by oneself. The love I had once poured into people who never valued it, I now poured back into me. And for the first time in months, I looked in the mirror and recognized the man staring back. Strong, patient, unbroken. Some memories still arrived uninvited. The laughter of the girl I loved. The arrogant smirk of my cousin. Shadows of a life I had once known. For a moment they could sting, but I didn't let them wound me anymore. I held them gently, like faded photographs tucked carefully into a box, and carried on. I even forgave quietly without fanfare. Not because they deserved it, not because it erased what happened, but because I deserved peace. Forgiveness didn't change the past. It didn't erase betrayal or lies. It didn't bring back the time lost or the love misplaced. But it freed me from carrying the weight of their choices any longer. Life had taught me a bitter, beautiful lesson. Sometimes, the people who hurt us the most are the ones who teach us how strong we truly are. Sometimes, the goodbyes we fear the most are the very ones that set us free. I walked forward into each day, lighter, sharper, calmer. I discovered that resilience isn't born from avoiding pain. It's born from surviving it. It's born from walking through the fire and emerging not bitter, but wiser. Not broken, but whole. And in that calm, in that quiet clarity, I found something more valuable than revenge, more powerful than anger, more permanent than love lost. I found myself. In the end, some goodbyes are blessings in disguise.